Hi, so in this video we're going to use a weight on the end of a rope to learn how to meditate real good. And so by meditate real good, I mean remove all oppositional polarity from your experience. And so you get a weight, tie something to the end of a rope. If you want, you can get something to affix the rope to your fingers, but you don't have to. Just hold on to it if you need to, or you can tie it to yourself, whatever. And so you're gonna have a system with a rope, and the rope's gonna be attached to you, it's gonna be attached to your hand. You could do this with your head or anything, but let's use the hand just for simplicity's sake. The weight connected to the hand, and then we spin that, right? And so we have what is essentially a single system, right? But this system is based off of tension and opposition. The weight is moving in opposition to the hand. That's putting tension on the string, and then that tension is moving around and around and around. So the system is essentially a tension system based on, and the tension, what's pulling it under tension? Opposition, polarity, positive, negative, tension. You could have a compression system doing the same thing. So we want to remove the opposition, lessen it, lower the opposition between the hand and the weight. So remove the tension from the rope. The rope starts to hold the system together, but using very little tension. It's almost like the rope is informing. It's just transmitting information between the weight and the hand, is what the rope starts to do, and it transmits very little force. Like there's much less force on the rope here because I've removed the opposition, I've removed the tension by how I'm focusing my mind and how I'm using my body. So if we breathe, you want to find the same thing. You want to find a system with you want to find a system that has a polarity, something connected by the polarity. And so the breath is a compression system. Like when you're breathing in, the thing that's connecting the system together is under compression, as if you're squeezing a balloon. And then when you inhale, you're pulling, so there's a tension system, right? So you can either be compressing the breath or pulling on the breath, and then that's what you have as a system. So your push, like with your body or whatever this one end of it is, you could probably chase it up very high, like whatever one end of the breath is, like what is breathing, like what is pushing on the air, right? I can push air, compression system, or I can pull air, tension system. So that same thing's happening where I have a tension system like this. So now how do I make it so that the tension of the compression is carrying less weight and transmitting more information? So I have to sit there and look at that, right? So I'll notice instantly that lots of compression, lots of tension. Can I interact with the breath where both sides of the equation become weightless? And you can move and look for tension compression elements in the breath, like deep down. You'll just find it like, or gasping patterns, like if you have to suddenly gasp in, that's adding tension and compression to the breath every time that happens, and that's the same as the string going taut in the poi. Like, it's supposed to be here, and at no point in this cycle should the string be taut. So you should be having the breath where at no point do you feel the tension or the compression of the breathing. And so that gets into this flotation space. And then once you're there, you would go, okay, how can I move around without adding any tension or compression to the breath? And it's a very nuanced, subtle art. The degree to which you're doing this is the degree to which you have freedom of movement in that breath. Because it's only if you're in a posture or in a movement pattern with no tension or compression, do you have the freedom to add tension or compression however you want. If you're in a posture or position that is like reliant on tension and compression, you can't remove it. You're not free. You can't just add it because the system's dependent on this tension or this compression. So you can't change that without destabilizing the breath or destabilizing the system. So and what's happening is that to remove all tension, compression, to remove all doing from you, you have to stop, and then as the percentage of oxygen and CO2 in the lungs changes in relationship to the air, that change, that electricity, that draw is the thing that will inflate or deflate the lungs. So you're letting the lungs inflate and deflate just based off of the osmotic gradient in the lungs. And so that osmotic gradient in the lungs will be dependent on the osmotic gradient of oxygen and CO2 in the blood. And so if you stop breathing, suddenly the osmotic gradients of the blood starts to change the osmotic gradient of the breath. That changes the inflation volume of the lungs. And the whole thing starts to breathe itself from the electricity rather than from using the electricity of the body to add tension or compression to the lungs like a bellows. You're just using the electricity directly to cause the breathing to happen. So it seems like an extreme passivity on the part of the breathing, and it's a little bit, it's very calm, very relaxed, very natural, but it can be very shocking and uncomfortable, similar to how like falling into water and you just letting yourself float can be shocking and uncomfortable due to the temperature of the water, or due to there being giant waves, or due to there being sharks or creatures or phantasms, right? Like when you drop into depending on who you are, depending on where you are, dropping into the water, the consciousness in your particular area is going to come with particular eases or risks involved. Like if you jump into the ocean in a certain area, you have risks of the wildlife there, you have risks of the weather patterns there, versus if you jump into a swimming pool or you jump into a lake, or it just kind of depends on where you are, like what your being is like, what's the water in your area doing. And so when you jump into that, those are going to be the obstacles and the scariness that bumps you out of like true meditation or what have you. And it's going to be different for some people. It might be technically difficult. For other people, there might be actual like entities or wildlife in their area, so they're going to deal with like demons and poltergeists and ghosts and fantasies and who knows what else. Where some people exist in a more sterilized environment where that stuff doesn't exist. It's all very, very personal. There's a trade-off of like, if somebody exists in an environment with wildlife, they're usually going to be existing in an area where there's tremendous waves in their consciousness, and so they'll be able to do really impressive things that are similar to like surfing, to where the water, the consciousness is driving them beyond what the limits of human performance. Whereas if you're in like a pool there's no risks of anything, but there's also no chance for anything like surfing to ever happen, except in a very contrived artificial environment. And yeah, so that's how to meditate and